Next, I'd like to welcome Angela Shillette, Environmental Administrator at the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, Office of Agricultural Water Policy. Angela has over 25 years of experience in water resource management, and in her current position is responsible for presenting agricultural perspectives and data to other state agencies, the water management districts, and stakeholders, while coordinating water supply and non-point source water quality issues statewide. Angela, thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. You should have remote control of the slides whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Tried my first forward button there. We'll see if it comes through after a little lag, but I am Angela Shillette, a professional geologist, working with the Department of Ag and Consumer Services in the Office of Ag Water Policy. There we are. Okay, so I've done the introduction, so we can go on to the next one now. The Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services is an extremely diverse agency, very large. We have, I think, around 3,500 employees and a number of departments. And the duties are very wide ranging, from school lunch programs to licensing private investigators to making sure that gas pumps and grocery store scales are accurate. The Office of Agricultural Water Policy that I am part of does coordinate agricultural water supply issues and water quality issues statewide. So we have a very broad vision of what's going on, and it's extremely variable in different parts of the state, of course. Agricultural water use, cropland and grazing represents the largest land use in Florida by area, nearly 10 million acres, and brings in cash receipts of over $7.5 billion annually. Agriculture is also the largest water use category in the state until around 2005, when potable water, public water supplies and domestic wells, individual self-supply surpassed it. And both of them now, even though there have been population increases and increasing intensification of ag operations, are still kind of hanging on at around that same 2005 level of 2.5 to 3 million gallons of water a day ever since 2005. And there we go. And as Florida continues to grow, resource concerns, including water quality concerns, grow right along with it. This is a map from the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection webpage, showing impaired waters. And the ones in gray are just, they know that they're impaired. And these can be impaired for a number of different constituents, low dissolved oxygen, bacteriological things, but as Andrea said, statewide, it's the same issue. It's largely nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus contamination, or excessive levels, which of course leads to excessive plant growth and really can throw off the ecosystem. So the blue lines show the areas where DEP has adopted a total maximum daily load and said this is as much as this water body can assimilate. And then the green areas are where they have actually adopted basin management action plans to try to improve water quality. And this is where our nexus comes in with the process of water quality improvement, because part of the Office of Agricultural Policy's charge is to develop best management practices for agriculture to improve water quality, conserve water, and protect water resources, and ensure then following that agricultural producers are enrolled in the department's best management practices program, and implementing all the applicable best management practices for their operation and their site, because variables in where they're located, what they're growing, and those things can influence what suite of best management practices they have to implement. So the office enrolls producers everywhere in the state, but within the basin management action plans areas, producers are required to enroll and implement all applicable BMPs, best management practices, or they must monitor water quality, which will be overseen by DEP or the Water Management District to ensure that they're compliant with the Basin Management Action Plan requirements and that they're helping to meet the water quality improvement goals. Next slide. So best management practices are both management strategies, tools, and practices that improve water quality or conserve water or protect water resources, or sometimes a combination, because those things do have quite a bit of overlap in a number of instances. For example, fertilizer application needs to be as efficient as possible, but how much of that gets maybe lost to the environment or appropriately used by the plant in the root zone can depend a lot of times on irrigation, rainfall events, one of which we have control over and the other not so much. So we're always looking for the best available science and technology, because that is one of the criteria for a best management practice to be adopted by the department. Is that it has to be based on best available science and technology. It has to be technologically and economically feasible. And that's as a criteria for inclusion in the manual. So really, if a best management practice reaches the manual, it has been determined that it's technically and economically feasible for producers to implement. A best management practice must provide a balance between productivity and water quality improvement. So we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you will. You know, we have to balance those two things, because water quality improvement is our goal. But if we put the producer out of business, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, because farmlands do provide a lot of habitat for wildlife, open spaces, and other environmental services that if the farming operation were gone from the landscape, would be lost potentially. So proper implementation is actually confirmed through site visits every 2 years. The Office of Ag Water Policy staff goes out and meets with producers, verifies that they're properly implementing their BMPs, verifies their record keeping, collects any required data. And then if through new BMPs being developed and adopted, or if there are changes in the laws or there are changes in the operation, adjustments are made at that time as to what suite of BMPs maybe the producer needs to implement on his site. And as we know, all plants need water and nutrients, and agriculture's challenge is to apply both appropriately and the most effectively and efficiently. Certainly we have the 4 R's of nutrient management, which is the right fertilizer source at the right rate, the right time, and in the right place. And then the next challenge is to not lose those nutrients to the environment, which can, come through, maybe excessive irrigation, leaching rain events, flooding, and those sorts of things. Examples of the current BMPs that you can see on the screen there are precision nutrient application, which I have to say, the citrus sprayer with eyes so that it knows from the size of the plant how much nutrient to apply, exactly where to put it out, because some of it is a fuller application where it sprays, making sure that they're not putting out too much. They also have a similar thing for row crops, where they put the appropriate level of nutrients right at the root zone of plants. And then certainly irrigation efficiency, as I said, is always a big thing, because we are trying to conserve water, prevent runoff, and keep the nutrients in the root zone, which irrigation management, again, can play a large part in that. And then, we want to use some of the remote sensing, water, soil moisture detectors to help producers make better decisions about when to apply nutrients, when to irrigate. So certainly all of those technologies and how they can be integrated is a big resource and research issue for the department. There we go. Development of BMPs, and the initial verification of BMP effectiveness is driven by research. And the Office of Ag Water Policy provides research funding and grants each year to universities to help advance best management practices. The office is required each year to develop a research plan now, and we've done our first one. We're working on our second one. We have actually gotten approved $3.4 million for research projects this fiscal year, and we're currently reviewing 21 pre-proposals totaling over $7 million for inclusion in the statewide research plan for fiscal year 2022-2023. So we're really excited about all of these projects. And, just to give you a quick idea, what we found is we're going to be posting a request for the pre-proposals in early January, get everybody back from the holidays, put out the RFP, receiving proposals by early February, working with the research coordinating group, and that's Catherine Holland, who would have been doing the presentation this morning if she were not at that actual meeting, leads the whole effort for our research plan and all of the RFP and everything. So we would be making final decisions for projects that start on July 1st of the next fiscal year around March of the year before. And then having the legislative budget request submitted by August, so that, every year we expect that now that's going to be an ongoing process with a similar sort of timeline. So again, we will be looking for any pre-proposals or ideas that folks might have coming in or right around the first of the year. Research needs wise, as I was saying before, there are a lot of opportunities. Nutrient management, water and irrigation management, those things are inextricably linked. Investigations on innovative ways to keep nutrients from being lost are ongoing, and we're always looking for new and innovative methodologies, ways to leverage different technologies by combining them, looking at any kind of use of control release fertilizers or use of fertigation. So then instead of putting out a large amount of dry fertilizer, and then if there's a leaching rain event, it could all be lost, just putting out very specific amounts that are needed for the crop at specific times. And that way too, if there is a leaching rain event, you would be losing less of your total crop need potentially whenever those events occur. And then even looking at cover crops or things that can go back and scavenge nutrients in the off season and recover anything that might have been lost by a shallower rooted crop. And then there are also benefits of some cover crops that can be then rolled down and used to help retain moisture in the soils, tie up some of the nutrients and those sorts of things as well. And always, again, leveraging these different technologies together, or looking at ways to make tools more scalable or economical, are always great research projects. And one of the models that we have found to be most successful for a lot of these is to, start at a small scale, do it kind of as a longer term 3-stage kind of process. At a small scale, you can do a variety of different small variations in your project and see what's working out of some of the different options, like for cover crops or things like that. Then you can take the ones that are most successful from that, move them to an intermediate step where you're looking at a little bit larger, a little bit larger plot with a little bit less instrumentation and control to see what continues to work the best, what's the most successful. And we have actually gone back and forth between those first 2 steps a few times before we came up with a project or an option that we then wanted to take to the third step, which was a field scale demonstration. And that can be at either a research center or on a farmer's field, either way, but getting it out there so it's more at a more production scale, so that folks can really take a look at it. Measures that are successful at the demonstration scale are then the ones that we take forward to see if we can't get them adopted through the rulemaking process into our best management practices manuals. To get that done, DAX proposes the new list of BMPs and the new manual to DEP. DEP has to do an initial verification based on the research. And then once it's adopted, then we would go out, and when we do that 2-year process of checking implementation verification, we would see which sites would be suitable for actual implementation of this new measure, and it would be applied. Now, of course, there is usually a demonstration and outreach element to any sort of proposal once you get to the demonstration size project, because certainly there is no restriction on producers going out and starting to do measures or adopting new technologies before it's actually made into rule. It's only once it's made into rule it might become an actual requirement for some folks. So that outreach is very important, and again, as part of all of the demonstration projects, at the very least. You know, we certainly don't mind if anybody shows folks stuff beforehand, but usually that's the point at which it's more, this might be something you could use on your site, whereas at the smaller scale, typically, it's still definitely dependent on the outcomes of that research stage. There's also outreach resources on OOP's webpage, the Office of Ag Water Policy's webpage, and there's going to be a link on the next slide, which is my final. But the office maintains a frequently asked questions page for best management practices. And certainly all of our funding, RFP requests, all of those sorts of things are out there for the research plan that we're doing. DAX is also providing funding for a series of very short videos that can be watched on the department's YouTube channel about best management practices and how this whole process operates from the research piece onto the actual enrollment and implementation verification. I think we've only got about 5 out there now, but they're planning on having, I think, 14 total. So we're going to have a lot of videos. And thank you very much for your time. That is the conclusion of my presentation.